guys have to be right all the time, or people start yelling, right? That seems like a really bad idea. If you think about cybersecurity, bad guys have to be right once to get in, right? You got to be right 100% of the time. You got to block every attempt for bad guys trying to get in. How realistic is that? Nobody's perfect, right? So one of the things that I'm trying to do is not necessarily to you guys, but get the message out that you guys are actually worth something. Okay? You guys are important, and what you do is important. You have to continue to fight, because when everything is running well and everybody's happy, you guys aren't getting bouquets of flowers and cookie cakes and things like that, right? There's not an IT administrator day, you know? We have administrative assistants day, we have bosses day, we have all these things, but there's no IT administrator, there's no IT help desk day, right? And this is a crummy position to be in, okay? So I understand that you guys suffer a lot, and I'm trying to get that message out as I talk. So keep fighting a good fight, do what you do, and do what you know is right, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're good to go.
I think we're good to go, and because we're broadcasting to an online audience, your limit is about mid-stage or beyond.
Can you still see me? How about here? Okay.
They can't answer it.
All right. Let's talk about Target. How many of you shop at Target? How many had to get a new credit card? Okay. And I honestly have not seen what you guys put on the brochure, but the target or the topic today I was going to talk about is a real-world case example. What I'm going to talk about is totally taken from open source stuff. Okay, I'm not giving you any inside information. I've not been a part of the Target investigation personally. I don't have anything. I don't know anything that you guys can't know, and basically most of this information I'm going to talk about comes from a Business Week article, and it's actually a pretty in-depth article. It's a pretty good read if you're interested in that kind of thing. But so the topic or the theme of this year's conference is your cyber fortune is in your hands, right? Well, I'm going to talk about how it's not. And we'll get back to how it is, but we're going to start with how it's not, okay? So let's talk about Target. Target, shortly before the breach, within the past year, Target had installed a $1.6 million malware detection system. $1.6 million is a lot of money, right? It's a system from FireEye, who is very well known, very respected in the industry, and frankly, their product's pretty good. Some of their customers include the CIA, include people who really do want to protect their data very well. And so Target was moving in the right direction. They have a team in India that monitors the network 24/7. So their main nerve center, I guess, or their SOC, the Security Operations Center, is in Minnesota, I believe, which is where Target is based. But they're paying someone overseas to monitor the network 24/7. If something happens, they're supposed to notify the SOC in Minneapolis, I believe it is, and then they're supposed to react, right? Okay, so they've got people, and I don't know how you guys work, but I don't think you have people in your office 24/7. It's just hard to do. Well, Target's decided this is something that's important, and so they do this. In November, this is November of last year, someone uploads malware to steal credit card numbers. There's various debates on exactly how this happened. The prevailing theory, at least in the Business Week article, is that it was through a vendor, and it was like a HVAC vendor. They used their login credentials to upload malware to the Target network. Now, number one, any of you security people in here should know, why in the world does an HVAC company have access to your network remotely, number one. Number two, if they do have to have access remotely, why are they allowed to upload things to your network? Number two. Number three, if they are due for whatever reason, for whatever crazy reason you have set up, they do need to upload things, why is that able to go to every point in your network? That would be a problem, right? Talk about segmentation of networks. This is problem number one. Okay? So, and this is in early November. On November 30th, they upload exfil software. So the first piece of malware was to collect the data. The second piece was to actually get the data out to servers that the bad guys control. FireEye didn't pick up on the first piece of malware. Okay, we just heard, you're not going to catch everything, right? 75%, 80%, you're not going to be able to catch everything. They do catch the exfil software. The product worked exactly like it was supposed to. Okay? India sees the alert from the FireEye software, notifies the SOC, and nothing. So, your cyber fortune is in your hands. Well, that's clearly not true, right? You don't have control over Target's network. Frankly, I don't think I would want that job right now. But I certainly wouldn't have wanted it back in November. But it's not totally up to us. Okay? But it is. And we're going to talk about why that is. Through February 1st, they spent $61 million responding to this. That doesn't include any lawsuits. It doesn't include any paying out of, any kind of fines that they were imposed or any kind of any of the monitoring programs that they offer because they have all of our credit cards now. Profits fell 46% over the Christmas season year over year. This came out, it was actually announced right towards the very end of the Christmas holiday shopping season, or in the middle, towards the end. And people said, well, I'm not going to go shop there. Now, frankly, that was probably, once it was announced, that was probably the safest time to shop at Target. They had all sorts of security people in there monitoring their network during that time, including law enforcement. That's what, I went to Home Depot here recently to buy something for the house, and I was talking to the cashier, and I said, is it okay to swipe my credit card? Knowing full well that, they have just been breached and all these things. Of course, the cashier has no idea what I'm talking about. I said, well, actually, since you guys were just breached and you now have all these experts in your network, this is probably one of the safest places to shop because you have all these outside people looking at your network. So now not only are they spending $61 million, but their profits are down almost by half. CIO left the company. It was time to move on. Yeah, okay, whatever. I get that. Yeah, well, it's time to move on because they were going to fire you. 40 million plus credit cards stolen, personal information of 70 million plus customers was compromised. That's a lot. Up until the Home Depot hack, that was one of the largest single instances. Good thing Home Depot came along and saved Target, right? According to a Verizon Enterprise study, they did over 3 years, 31% of businesses find breaches on their own. How does the other 69% find out?
The FBI calls them.
Honestly, we're the best intrusion detection system you have, we being the FBI. I follow a guy on Twitter that was at a conference down in Tennessee, and that's one of his points was to the conference was the FBI is the best intrusion detection system known right now. That's a problem. You should be discovering this stuff before we do. Okay? Now, we are not in your network. We don't, we're not monitoring the entire internet or anything like that. We do have a lot of sources of information, and oftentimes the way that companies find out is from us coming in and notifying them. That's a problem. Something we need to work on. But if you look at that 31% of all businesses, look at what retail is. 5%. So 95% of all retail breaches were discovered by someone other than the company themselves. That's a huge problem. That's pathetic, is what it is. Okay? Your cyber fortune, your credit card, even if it is literally in your back pocket, is not in your hands. Anytime you go and swipe it, you have no idea what's going to happen to it. So let's talk about what we can do. Well, let's talk about what we can't do first. So is it in your hands? Probably not. All these people have been hacked in the last year. Which, frankly, let's look at all these. So you got Target, okay. Yeah, Dairy Queen, that one came out in the last couple of weeks. Home Depot. If I'm a bad guy, I think some of Neiman Marcus, that's clearly the credit cards I want. If you can afford to shop at Neiman Marcus, I want your credit card, you know? It's like the Amex Black cards, right? You know, those are the ones that you want. They have no limit on them. JP Morgan Chase, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. Albertsons, I could either take it or leave it. But Neiman Marcus, those are the cards you want. You need goods and services, right? How many of you are doomsday preppers? You got one in the back. So you, sir, are fully sustainable. You don't need anyone else, right? You grow your own food, all that good stuff. Okay. So the rest of you, sir, you can take a nap here for a few minutes. The rest of you need goods and services, right? You do not produce your own food. You do not sew your own clothes. And even if you do sew your own clothes, you have to go buy fabric from somebody. You don't weave your fabric for your own clothes, right? So you have to have goods and services. You can't control a company's security policy. You can't even control your own security policy. Jim controls your security policy, right? Here at the state. And we're not going to get into how true that is or how true it isn't. I know there's a lot of issues between all that stuff, so I won't get into that. You can't control the bad guys. There are bad people out there on the internet. I know this is a surprise to some of you, but there are bad people out there in the world, okay? They want your data. How many of you have never used the internet? Thank you very much. Okay? You know, we were talking about the cloud earlier, right? How many of you have iPhones? Every time you send an iMessage, that's the cloud. That goes through Apple servers. Okay? So you're never going to text again, right? Believe me, that's the least of your problems. I mean, you can't. We live in a culture that is completely connected. You know, what happens when the network goes down? You know, there were those commercials a few years ago where, you know, it's like the mass exodus out of the office building. You know, like, the guy comes in late, he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, oh, we're going for coffee. He's like, well, why is the whole company go, oh, the network's down, can't do anything. I mean, seriously, right? Everything that we do has some, you know, one of the things that we're struggling with in the FBI is we have this cyber division, right? We're all, you know, we're cyber trained, we're going after guys like this. Problem is that we have to go out and help other squads on everything. There's not a criminal case that we work that doesn't involve a computer, a cell phone, an email address, something, right? So it's not just the cyber people that need to know this stuff. We've got to propagate that information across the entire FBI. We've got like 13,000 FBI agents that all need to know what is an IP address, what do you do with an IP address, what is an email, what kind of information can I get from that, what about cell phones? You know, it's like Zoolander, you know, some of our guys, it's like Zoolander, have you seen that movie? When the files are in the computer and he starts banging on it, right, you know, like a monkey, right? I mean, seriously, you know, we have to propagate that information because everything has to do with the internet. So you can't stay off the internet. You can't control the data that is collected about you. How does that make you feel? Lovely, right? Every time you shop somewhere, let's talk about Home Depot. Home Depot uses a product that they have Wi-Fi that they provide in their store. They have routers all across their store. If you don't turn off your Wi-Fi when you walk into a Home Depot, and this is not just Home Depot, there's other stores that do this, but I happen to know specifically Home Depot does this. When you walk into the store, your iPhone or your smartphone tries to connect to the Wi-Fi. Even if you're not actually pulling it out and using it, it's broadcasting, hey, are the Wi-Fi's out? The Wi-Fi says, yeah, I'm here. Home Depot can tell which aisle you walk. They can tell how long you spent in that aisle. And then through some fancy data collection stuff that they do behind the scenes at companies that they contract with, when you swipe your credit card, which of course was now stolen by somebody overseas, but when you swipe your credit card, they match the data of what you bought with where you went in the store and how long you spent on each item. And Home Depot's not the only one. I'm not trying to bash Home Depot here. People want as much information about you as they can. So you really cannot control what kind of info is collected about you. Now, one of the things you can say, oh, well, I'll turn off my Wi-Fi. Absolutely, great idea. Especially if you're not currently using it. What if you just want to go and get credit somewhere? What happens when you go to get a loan for something? They run a credit history. And if no one has collected any data on you, what do they say? No. We don't know who you are. To get credit, you have to have credit. Now, how do you initially get credit? I don't know how that process works. It's the whole catch-22 thing. But if you have to get like higher risk, higher APRs on your credit cards, higher risk loans, all those kinds of things. You don't control what data is collected about you. That's a problem. You can move to Europe. They have pretty good privacy laws over there. You can't control your IT department. Even if you are the IT department, you don't control, unless you're the manager, you don't control what happens in your IT department. Okay? You can't control your hardware because all that's bid out to the lowest bidder. You don't totally control your computer. One of the things that people always used to say, especially back in the Unix, Linux, and DOS days, was, a computer will never do anything that you don't tell it to do, right? Computers aren't sentient. They can't just, rise up and kill us all. Well, there's some people that think they can, so beware of them. But they will only respond to commands, right? Now, how many of you have ever had a computer do something that you didn't tell it to do, right? So how do you justify those two things? Well, a computer will only do what it's told. But there are lots of things that are happening that you have no control over. When Microsoft writes an operating system, there's all these things that happen behind the scenes that you don't need to know about. And it's telling the computer what to do. Now, sometimes those things go wrong, right? If somebody writes code incorrectly, the processor doesn't know how to handle it, too much memory is taken up, whatever, blue screen of death. Okay? So you don't even totally control your computer, even if it's the personal one that you bought and you installed at your house. Well, that's kind of a depressing thought, isn't it? You don't control your network policies. All right, that's it, I give up. You're all screwed. That's all I have to say. Have a good day. No. Never give up. We have to fight the good fight. Bad people are out there. People do drugs, people deal drugs, people kill each other, and we don't just say, you know what? We give up. We're just going to disband the Charleston Police Department. We're going to disband the state police. No. We continue to fight. So, is your cyber fortune in your hands? Yes, to some extent. And we're going to talk about some things here in the next few minutes that you may not have thought about how specifically it's in your hands. Okay? These are things you can control. Why is passwords number one? Because all of your passwords suck. You notice I'm not laughing, I'm dead serious. It is ridiculous to me when I walk, oftentimes when we do notifications, when we go and say, hey, you guys have been hacked, depending on what kind of data that we've collected already, oftentimes I will, they'll say, hey, to tell you this, you guys have been compromised, here's why we think what we think, and sometimes I can explain a little bit more. And one of the things they often say is, well, no, that's impossible. That could never happen. We have the best security in the world. And what I like to do, if I have it, is I go, well, here's some of your passwords. Let me just hand those to you. Well, you hacked us. Yes, because I have nothing better to do than spend time trying to get into your stupid network. I didn't hack you, okay? But you were hacked, and I do have your passwords. And password 123 is a crappy password. Okay? Let's talk about passwords. Passwords are like underwear. This is not my own. I took this from the internet. I don't want to take credit for this, but it is very apropos, and hopefully you will remember this. Passwords are like your underwear. You don't share them. Hopefully. You don't hang them on your monitor or hide them under your keyboard. So one of the things that we do when we go do a search warrant is, if we're seizing a computer, we look around the desk for passwords. Because it's a lot easier for me to take your written down password and type it in than me try to crack it myself, or to try to get you to give it up. So some of you are really sneaky, and you'll you won't paste it on your monitor, but you'll put it under your keyboard. So I flip that up. But when I flip it up, I don't just move it. I actually flip it up, because some of you actually hide it on the underside of your keyboard. The really bad thing is now we all have optical mice, right? so we don't need the mouse pad anymore. And I know a lot of you still use mouse pads. Those things are disgusting. Throw them away. But if you have an optical mouse, you don't need the mouse pad anymore, which that was a great place. We would always, with gloves on, flip the mouse pad over because you guys keep it on the back of the mouse pad, right? And then some of you are really sneaky and you actually put it in your desk drawer. And with the search warrant, I can open your desk drawer, okay? Don't place them, Pete. Places. You don't email them or put them on a website. If you were emailing your underwear, that's kind of weird. Don't email pictures of your underwear, whether you were wearing them or not. Okay? But how often do you go, you know, like we do this all the time, especially interagency stuff. Someone will send me a thing and say, hey, this file is encrypted. You know, it's a zip file or whatever it is, and here's the password. Well, that just, and oftentimes it's in the same email. I'm like, you don't even have to intercept 2 different emails. You just have to intercept one. This is not complicated, guys. Don't email your passwords around. And you must change them very often. Hopefully, you're changing your underwear at least once a day. You know, there's the old college thing where you can get at least 2 wears out of it because you flip them inside out. It doesn't work with passwords. You don't just flip your password around, okay? Now, obviously, you're not going to change your password every day. That's ridiculous. But you should change your password more than once since 1998. Okay? And here's the thing. Remember that AOL account that you haven't logged into since, you know, 1998? That still exists. Remember that MySpace account when MySpace was all the rage? That's still out there. All your personal data that you put out there is still out there. Okay? So keep that in mind. Places you go. I love stock photos on the internet. Like, because that's what they look like. Did you know that? When they're hacking into your computer, they have a mask on so nobody can see them. I just want you to know that. As in life, bad things happen in bad places at bad times. Okay? If you're at out downtown Charleston at 4 o'clock in the morning, drunk, something bad is much more likely to happen than if you're in downtown Charleston at 12 noon at a restaurant when, you know, it's open and everybody's there, right? I mean, it's just odds. Bad things happen in bad places at bad times. Bad things happen on the internet in bad places at bad times. So what do I mean by that? Stay off the dark side of the internet. If you don't understand what I'm talking about porn. Make it perfectly blunt. Porn websites, especially if they're free, are littered with malware. Absolutely littered with malware. If you're using a Tor browser and you're going to some of these dark places on the internet, Silk Road version 2. Why is Silk Road version 2? Because we popped Silk Road version 1 and it no longer exists. If you're going to these places, be careful. If you're hanging out in carding forums, you better know what you're doing. Okay? Don't chase the story of the moment. Please don't raise your hand when I'm asking this question. How many of you saw the news articles about the celebrity pictures that were released? Don't raise your hand. Think about it in your mind. Did you see that story? How many of you then went to try and find those photos? There you go. Maybe I should have clarified. Don't raise your hand for any of these questions. If I'm a hacker and I need to infect people's computers, what am I going to do? I'm going to put a file out there that says, hey, Jennifer Lawrence nude photos. You're going to go, oh, this is clearly it. Let me download it and open it. And your antivirus goes, no, don't open this. And you go, well, I really want to see these. I'm sure it's fun. Right? You're all laughing like you have no idea what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about. Now, the bad news is that sometimes people get shot in broad daylight, right? Sometimes, even if you're downtown at 4 a.m. and you're supposed to be there for some reason, sometimes bad things happen. You have to be there for whatever reason, okay? I'm not saying that if you, as long as you stay off porn websites, you're going to be safe on the internet. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's no reason to be on those in the first place, and I don't want to know what your reasons are, okay? But don't go looking for trouble. Does that make sense? Stay up to date with who's being compromised. You talked about this in one of your questions. So one of the things that you need to do is, and believe me, it's difficult, keep up with the news. You know, all of these major hacks have been reported by the national news. Okay? This is not like on some weird information security website that none of you have ever heard about. This is in the public knowledge, okay? You need to be keeping up with that and go, when you hear about it, say, hey, do I shop there? And if so, you need to start taking a look at your credit card information a little more closely. Those minimal charges that he was talking about, very important. If you aren't balancing your credit card statements, your bank statements every month, you're going to miss stuff. Depending on who you bank with, they may have a really good security department, and their security department may be not so good. We'll talk about a little bit more about that here in a few minutes, but it's your responsibility to guard your stuff. It's not the bank's responsibility. They do have some legal obligations, but it's your responsibility to guard your own information. 5% of retailers don't discover that they've been breached. That's a problem. We need to shame them, if that's what it takes, into providing better security. Okay? There is a standard that the credit card companies put out to say, your network has to meet this to log on to our network and process credit cards. Those standards are lame. As long as I meet the minimum requirements, which are I mean, I'm pretty sure my home computer meets, that's not good enough. One of the things, why is the United States the biggest target for this kind of attack? Anybody know?
We don't use chip and pin.
Chip and pin. How many of you know what chip and pin is? That's a problem, okay? Europe is mandated to use the chip and pin technology in their credit cards. It is much more difficult to reproduce card. It's literally more expensive to buy the cards and then actually put the data on the cards. Now, if I get your credit card information, I can go online and buy like 1,000 blank credit cards for $10 or $15. And I just sit there and that's not the credit card numbers, it's just literally blank plastic with a magnetic strip. Load your number on there and I go use it wherever I want. One of the things that recently, within the last 6 months, a business here locally, who I won't mention, I found this out through another law enforcement agency. A guy walks in and wants to purchase something from business. He pulls out 4 credit cards from his pocket and hands them to the cashier and says, just use whichever one works. And guess what happened? He walked out with all of that stuff and the 4 credit cards. That's an issue. That's a training issue. That's a common sense issue. I don't even know how else to go about that, but that's a problem. But anyway, sorry, that was totally off topic. Back to chip and pin technology. Chip and pin technology exists and for years has been in use in Europe. Why is it not here? Because the retailers say, well, we don't really want to upgrade our system until the banks start issuing chip and pin cards. And the banks say, well, there's no point in us issuing chip and pin cards until the retailers upgrade their systems. Well, somebody's got to go first, right? You need to request from your bank a chip and pin card. My bank, who I won't mention because the FBI does not endorse any commercial enterprise, but my bank, after the Home Depot hack, said, hey, you got popped. If you guys knew how many times my credit card has been swiped at Home Depot, you'd be shocked. I do all my own home improvement work, and Home Depot pretty much owns my paycheck. But they said, hey, your credit card was compromised, and they set up a website because I guess they got a lot of requests for, what's going on with this? What are you guys doing about it? One of the questions was, why are you not issuing chip and pin cards? That's a question you should be asking your bank. And basically what they said is in the next, I believe, year, all of this bank's customers are going to be issued new chip and pin cards. I'm good with that. You need to do that with your bank. Chip and pin technology will prevent, will make it a lot more difficult, I should say, to do this kind of thing. Okay? And the fact that you guys don't know that means that your bank doesn't care. So go call your bank as soon as we get done. You're at lunch. Go call your bank and say, why are you not issuing chip and pin cards? And I think you'll be surprised. Someone will say, well, we'll be happy to issue one. You just never asked. They have it available. We're just not taking advantage of it. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. Choose trusted companies that are open, honest, and transparent. How many of those exist? I don't have any idea. One of the things you need to do is when you're searching for something online, and I know this sounds like 1999, but you don't go to Bob's website and try to buy something with your especially not with your debit card. You use trusted websites. If it looks like the website was built in 1999, it probably was, and that's the last time they updated their security. Don't use it. Who has some of the best security in the industry on online retail? Anybody know? Amazon. Why? Because they have so many stinking credit cards pass through there, and they don't want to be on the news like Target and Home Depot and everybody else. Okay? Demand with your money, the banks do better. If your bank says, we're not issuing chip and PIN cards and we never will, switch banks. Period. It's not complicated. And this has been one of the things that the fraud has been perpetrated. Oh, it's just the cost of doing business. Guess who the cost of doing business gets passed on to? The bank's not like, oh, well, gosh, happened again. I guess we just won't make money this quarter. No, they just charge you more. That's junk. Don't click on anything. No matter where you go on the internet, just don't click on it. Don't open email, just don't click on it. Right? I mean, seriously, there's so much stuff that's out there. Please think about what you're doing. If you get an email, even if it looks like it's from somebody you know, but you're not expecting it, give them a call. Let me ask you this, which one's easier? Discovering a zero-day exploit or getting you to click on an attachment? Click. Zero-day exploits are very difficult and very hard to find. That's why they can command a fair amount of money. Well, why would I go to all that trouble if I can just get you to click on an attachment that lets me into your network? Low-hanging fruit here, people. This is not rocket science, right? I'm going to get into your network the easiest way that I can. And if it's through an end user, that's what I'm going to use. Don't click on anything. Make changes when you make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. We already talked about that. All you have to do is not make the same mistake twice. Pay attention. It's not complicated. There are parts to this that are very complicated. But just taking that half extra second to say, do I really need to open this email right now? Should I run this by somebody? Should I pick up the phone and call somebody? Just pay attention to what you're doing. Now, this is a fun one for IT security folks, because you guys oftentimes enforce the policies, and then you get around them yourself. I was doing a presentation about a month ago to an organization who I won't mention here in the state, and one of the people came up to me afterwards and said something to the effect of, hey, we do business with this outside contractor, and we've been sending files back and forth through Dropbox. This is, I won't say too much to give away who it is, but, and I said, well, what kind of information are you sending back and forth? Oh, well, it's about research. Okay, that's probably not good. What kind of research? Well, there's some DoD contracts, and there's some this and some of that, and I'm going, does DoD know you guys are doing this? Oh, I don't know, we never asked. Okay, well, you at least put a password on these files and you encrypt them before you send it through Dropbox, right? No. Not good. You guys have a responsibility to protect the state's data. You have a responsibility to protect my data, because you have my data, because I am a resident of the state. If you are not doing that and you're sending my information out on Dropbox, I'm going to come find you and I'm going to come hurt you. I don't want my information out there on Dropbox, okay? Security policies exist for a reason. Oftentimes they're onerous and difficult, and so we think, well, you know what, it's a lot easier if I just get around the security policy. Have the conversation with your IT department or yourself, if you're implementing the security policies, and say, what's the purpose behind this, and is there a better way that we can do this? One of the things we talked about with this woman who came up to me after the presentation was, there's probably in your organizations a way to transfer files securely. I grabbed one of their IT guys and I said, hey, let me ask you a question. If I wanted to transfer files securely, how would I do that? I said, oh, we have a particular vendor, I believe, that they use that provides secure transfer of files. All the servers are hosted in our network. We give them basically VPN access into our network, and they can download the files as they need. The solution was already there. She just wasn't using it. Don't try to get around your security policies. Security exists for a reason. Patch it or pitch it. How many of you know about Microsoft's Patch Tuesday? Microsoft, generally about once a month, they issue a bunch of patches. Patch your system, and that's all your software on your system, or remove it. I can almost guarantee you that 90% of you, maybe more, have Java installed on your computers. Java gets updates constantly because it's a, I don't want to say this, it's a little buggy, let's put it that way. And it's so prevalent that bad guys use it to get into computer systems because they know it's going to be installed on the vast majority of computers. If you're not using Java, don't sit there and update it every time, or don't, even worse, ignore the fact that it's prompting you to update it, and just remove it. How do you know if you're using Java? Just remove it, and if you get to go to a website that says, hey, you need Java, then go get it at that point. Okay? Minimize what you have, and this goes for your work computers and your home computers. Minimize the stuff that you have on there and either patch it or pitch it. That comes from Brian Krebs, if any of you know who he is. So let's talk about your security policies. Security policies shouldn't be punitive. I know in some organizations they can be, but they shouldn't be. The FBI likes to take our policies, not just security policies, and we have one person who's done something bad, so now we're going to punish all of you, right? Because this one person is an idiot, we're not going to fire them, we're going to suspend them, and then we're going to make a new policy that says you can't do exactly what this guy did. Well, all the rest of us knew that, right? Because we're not morons. But this guy has now created a new policy that we now have to follow, okay? That should not be the way policies are created. If they are, you guys need to have conversations about that. They're not set up to make your job impossible. If your job is impossible with the security policies you have a problem. You shouldn't be using Dropbox to get around it. You should be talking to your IT department and say, how can we fix this? There's a two-way street. You have to have communication. They're there to protect you, and they can and should be discussed. If you think something is onerous and difficult just because, have that conversation. Say, hey, I don't think this is really adding anything to our security posture, and it's really a pain in the butt. Is there anything we can do about this? Make sure you're having those conversations. Don't use Dropbox. Okay? And again, that's not Dropbox, the company. That's the idea of Dropbox, of taking the state's data outside of the state network and putting it somewhere that it doesn't belong. Okay? Attitude. You can control your attitude. Don't give up. Take advantage of free services after the breach. How many of you were affected by the Target hack and you had to get a new credit card? How many of you signed up for the free credit monitoring they offered? Okay? I just did the same thing with Home Depot. My card was compromised in the Home Depot attack. They offered free credit monitoring. Hey, it's free, right? Take advantage of it. Number one, you have a peace of mind for a year. Number two, you're driving up their costs, saying, hey, we don't want this to happen again. If you don't take advantage of the credit monitoring, they don't have to pay for it. So take advantage when companies offer this to say, you should have done this, now you're going to have to pay. Take advantage of security offer. What am I talking about? Two-factor authentication. After the iCloud celebrity picture hacking thing, and there's still some debate again about how exactly that came about, Apple did what? Apple said, we now offer two-factor security or two-factor authentication on iCloud. So you have to have, what's two-factor authentication? Something you know, your password, and something you have in your possession. In this case, an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, something like that. How many of you have signed up for two-factor? How many of you have Gmail accounts? How many of you have two-factor authentication turned on for your Gmail account? Not quite as many hands as have Gmail accounts. If they're offering security, take advantage of it. One of the things that Brian Krebs, he's a security journalist, I guess you could call him, computer security journalist. He talks about small businesses that are losing all this money through basically their bank accounts being drained by overseas hackers. One of the things that comes up a lot is the banks offer two-factor authentication and the companies aren't using it. That's on you, that's not on the bank. The bank can offer it, if you don't use it, that's your problem, it's not theirs. If there's offer, make sure you use it. Be nice to your IT staff. See, this is the message I'm trying to get out. When you call up and there's a problem, and you have a problem with your computer, you're ticked off, I understand, believe me, I get it. It's not your IT guy's fault. It's not the support, it's not the help desk's fault. So be nice. It doesn't take any more effort to be nice. Take 2 seconds, take a deep breath. Hey, I'm having a problem with my computer. Is there anything you can do to help me? Not, what did you guys do? Right? Because that's the way it comes in, isn't it? One of the things that's woefully behind, and I run into this quite often, is our laws. We need to, as a community, as a country, we need to ask our legislators to keep up with the law-making process. There's a lot of things that are going on with privacy and security and things like that. You guys know what you're talking about, hopefully, when you talk about computer security. You are the ones that need to be influencing our legislators to pass good laws to help protect our data, to help hold people accountable, and to prosecute people when that's necessary. Okay? If you collect my data, I expect you to protect it. Now, if I give you my data, like Facebook, like Gmail, something like that, I still expect you to protect it, but part of that's on me, right? Why am I giving Facebook my data? What am I telling Facebook about myself? Should I be telling Facebook that? The answer's no. Okay? But I expect you to protect it. And if you don't, we need to have a conversation as a community, as a country, about why you didn't do that and what you're going to do in the future to protect it. How many of you know about the security policies of Experian, like you talked about? How many know what the network security policies are for the 3 credit bureaus? I don't either. What are they doing to protect my data? If you go and you actually log in to check your credit score, what do? You know how you actually log into there to check your credit score? If you go to like free credit report, I think it's .gov. They present you a survey to see if you are who you say you are. So you actually have to go through and say, which street did you live on? Which one of these 4 options was one of your previous addresses? Is that really a secure way to do that? I would say no. So, but the 3 credit bureaus probably have more information on you than the government does. In fact, I can almost guarantee you that they do. What are they doing to protect it? How are they presenting it to other people? What are they doing with that? Europe has much stricter privacy laws than we do here in the United States, and that's a problem. And that goes back to the first one. We need to talk to our legislators and say, you guys need to keep up. We need to ask the FTC to enforce regulations. The FTC has responsibility for the 3 credit bureaus. So there are regulations that are out there, and we have to expect people like me, people in our government, to do their jobs and hold people accountable. And if they're not, it's our job as the people to hold the government accountable, right? That's what the Constitution's about. That's what this country was founded on. But it doesn't happen by just going, it's just another one. There's nothing I can do about it. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns, Snyder remarks? I know it's lunchtime and you guys want to get out of here. I completely understand.
How often are you changing for credit card? I mean, because it almost has to be monthly.
To keep it safe.
Are you being proactive or do you wait for a...
So I happen to know that my bank has one of the best security teams in the country. I happen to know that because the FBI is very involved with them. So I take a little bit more of a hands-off approach to my credit card specifically. Now, the other thing that I do is we have a debit card. I almost never use it because, like you said, you know, and even if the bank does reimburse your money, you don't have any money in the meantime. So even if it takes even 4 or 5 days, your bank account is depleted if they've got a hold of your debit card. So even if you don't have any long-term financial liability, that's a little bit of a cash flow problem, right? So you're back to your question. You can't change your credit. I mean, actually, you call up and say, hey, I think it's been compromised. But after, you know, if you do it every month, like you're suggesting, I think your bank's probably going to say, yeah, we're not going to give you a new one. One of the things that's interesting is Apple Pay. I'm not endorsing Apple Pay, but one of the interesting things about Apple Pay is it is, and for those of you who don't know, Apple Pay is coming with the new iPhone 6. It's not out yet, but it's a chip in the phone that when you go and swipe it's a NFC, near field communications, you actually touch it to the point of sale system where you swipe your card and you touch your phone to the system. What it does is it actually generates a one-time use credit card number. So if I go to Home Depot and Home Depot has been hacked, my actual credit card number is not in their system. Does that sound like a good idea? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good idea. Android's had NFC chips in their phones forever. And I don't know enough about it. I don't have an Android phone. I carry 3 phones, none of them are Android for some reason. But I don't know enough about the Android stuff to know. I assume that there's something very similar for Android. So you need to take advantage of that kind of stuff. A lot of credit card companies will, if you're shopping online, will offer you a one-time use credit card, a one-time use number. You log into their site, they generate the number, you use it, and it disappears. So if anybody compromises it, it doesn't matter. So those are the things you need to be thinking about. I would not call up my bank once a month and say, hey, I need a new credit card. One of the reasons I was really ticked off about the Home Depot thing, I had my credit card number memorized because I've typed it in so many times online, and now I have a new credit card number to memorize. That was the thing that ticked me off the most. But you know, you can't be getting a new credit card all the time, but you need to be looking at your statements, whether you do it online, whether you look at the paper bill to say, and this is where you get into like phone cramming. Do you guys know what phone cramming is? Where the phone company or third parties sign you up for like a $9.99 a month fee or a $19.99 a month fee. They bill you through your phone statement, and then the company that, you know, AT&T or Verizon gets a cut, and then whoever the third party company is gets a cut. Well, the reason that that's successful is because we don't check our bills. If I look at my cell phone statement, it should be generally the same every month, right? If I look at my bill and see a new charge for $9.99, you better believe I'm going to be on the phone to them saying, what the heck is this? But if you don't check your credit card statement, you go 6 or 8 months, and you've had a recurring charge on there for $19.99 or $79.99 or whatever it is. You know, a lot of companies have very limited timetables for when you can report that kind of stuff. And you're kind of, you know, out of luck if you don't report it timely. So you need to be keeping up with that. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, it's just Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next month it's going to be another place.
Yep. I guarantee you there's at least 3 right now that none of us in this room know about. And major national retailers. It's just, the odds are, it's happening. You know, and that's where I started off. You know, your cyber fortune really isn't in your hands in some ways. But you have to do what you can do. Expect more from your bank. Call your bank and say, hey, where's my chip and PIN card? So even if they have it, it's either more expensive for them to use, or it's actually impossible based on the PIN and the encryption and things like that. There's a question over here. Yes?
What do you think about using PayPal instead of your credit cards that's tied to your bank information? Is that any safer, or is it just open up your bank account number?
I would say that PayPal introduces another vector for somebody to get in. What I mean by that is, if I have your PayPal login, I don't have to steal your credit card number. So if I'm typing in my credit card directly to the website, I have to deal with that website if there's an issue, or my bank. If I use my PayPal, which is tied to my credit card, then I've got to deal with my bank and PayPal and the website. Plus, you have that failure point of the PayPal password. And since we all use password 123, that's not a good idea. Okay? Now, then you get into things like, what about 1Password or LastPass, these password aggregation software where it'll generate a 48 character random alphanumeric custom password for every site that you log into, which sounds really great. And you don't have to remember it. It logs in for you. And they have iPhone apps and all these things. And then you use password 123 to get into the software, and you defeat the whole thing. Okay? So just because this stuff, and I'm not saying 1Password or LastPass or any of those things are bad. I don't use them personally, but I don't know that it's probably a pretty good idea, assuming your master password is complex and long, and you don't write it down, or you don't share it, and all those things, and you change it relatively frequently. And here's the other thing, and I know a lot of you do this, in the state, I assume you guys have to change your password every so often, right? Every 90 days. Or we in the FBI like to, when we're all bored and we don't have anything to do, we just like to make new databases. And we create new, it doesn't work with any of the old stuff, so you have to have a completely different log on. And none of the passwords can be the same, you can't write any of them down, and you have to change every single one of them every 90 days. So guess what happens? They're not all different. And they're not all complicated passwords. And they're not, we don't change them every 90 days and then we just get kicked out of the system. Okay? So as IT folks, we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to make that not happen. But the other thing you need to not do is just increment your passwords by 1, right? So you have like I love milk and cookies 1, and then in 90 days it's I love milk and cookies 2. That's not really a password change. Because guess what, in 90 days, I can bet you what your password's going to be. I like milk and cookies 4, you changed it up on me, so it took me 2 guesses instead of 1. Make good passwords and change them significantly when you change them. Any other questions? I'm hungry too, so I'm more than welcome to. And if you have a question you want to talk, I'll stay here for a few minutes. Anybody has anything you don't want to bring up, hey, my password's password 123. Can you help me make a new password? Talk to me afterwards. All right, thank you very much.